Welcome to The Game Changer with Dr. Sharalyn, where purpose meets performance and leaders are built to shift legacies. I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne, executive strategist, speaker, and the secret weapon behind leaders who drive transformation at the highest levels. Each episode delivers bold truths, power skills, and real-world strategies to help you lead with precision, show up with presence, and build the kind of influence that outlasts trends. This is the space where high-impact decisions are born, where influence is intentional, and where the bold don't just lead, they change the game. So if you're ready to rise, ready to lead, and ready to create the kind of impact that moves markets, missions, and minds, you're in the right place. Welcome back, Game Changers. I have another dynamic episode that is sure to be impactful for you. I truly believe you're going to walk away with some concrete insights on what you can actually use to transform your life, your business, as well as your career. I have an accomplished woman with me that is hailing from another country. So I'm so excited. We're going international today. And I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit about who she is. Now, before we get started, I want you to do yourself a favor. I want you to ensure that you have, just like I do, an ink pen to take copious notes. I want to make sure that you're in a silent, quiet space because you want to honor this particular time that you have to really get some insights, some rich, fresh perspectives and insights that you can actually use to navigate through the challenges in your own life. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Sharon is an accomplished executive coach. She's a public speaker, a corporate trainer, and former IT executive with over 30 years of corporate experience. She holds an MBA, a certificate in diversity and inclusion, and is an ICF certified coach specializing in empowering high-performing women to lead confidently as well as purposefully. Originally from New York City, Sharon has lived in Vienna, Austria for over 2 decades, giving her a unique perspective as an expatriate navigating personal and professional challenges abroad. Through her signature Living While Leading framework, Sharon helps women in leadership roles redefine success, set boundaries, and align their careers with their values. You know, I absolutely love that. With a rich background that includes leadership roles at IBM, Citrix, and VM Software, Sharon combines her corporate expertise with her passion for mentoring mid-career women and women executives. Her work centers on addressing imposter syndrome, fostering inclusive cultures, and being strategic in living and leading authentically. Get ready to be inspired by Sharon's journey as well as her insights. Welcome, Sharon.
Oh, thank you for that beautiful introduction, Sharalyn.
Thank you for coming. I'm so delighted that you are here. When I had an opportunity to speak with you about a month or so ago, I was absolutely impressed reading your story and then connecting with you. It's just really, I would say empowering for lack of a better word. I was able to see some of the things that you have actually lived through in your background and how you've been able to translate that into a career of success. So why don't we just jump right in, and can you just kind of tell us, how did you, I would say, get the courage to even think that you could do everything that you've done? What did it start for you? I think sometimes we have those defining moments in our life, and so I would love to hear what was yours.
Well, I think one of the defining moments in my life was back in elementary school when I started to understand that I didn't have to be limited by my imagination or the imagination of other people. And I think that's quite important, particularly when you grow up in underserved communities, when you grow up poor. Teachers in your community may have certain ideas of what the limits are for their students, and they sort of impose their thinking on you. As an individual, you see what's around you, and you think that your world can only be as large as what you can see and what you can touch. And I started to understand very early on that the world was bigger. And I was very curious, and I've always considered myself a lifelong learner and a very, very curious person. And I pursued my curiosity. I would not be as bold to say that I never had fear, because I've always had fear and I'm very risk adverse, but I never let that fear stop me from pursuing the things that I thought I it should at least them a try, and see if I could pursue them with success or not.
Wow, thank you. So I want to dig a little bit deeper. Was there anything specific that happened? Was it a question? Do you recall if there was a question that the teacher asked, or perhaps an experience, a specific experience that allowed you to understand that you could dream bigger, that there was more for you, and
Yeah,
that you did
yeah.
not have to be defined by limitations?
Absolutely. When I was 10 years old, I had a teacher. Her name was Bernice Bender, and she was a marvelous woman. And for whatever reason, she decided to take me under her wing
Wow.
and give me extra assignments and give me more books to read. And she even asked, and this is the day when people wrote letters, she wrote my mother a letter and asked her if she could take me out to lunch to a restaurant with a restaurant that had linen on the table. So I just felt so incredibly special. She made me feel special. And
Wow.
she told me I was smart. And she gave me things that were much more challenging than the other students or, classmates. And that was the moment when I realized, oh, I can do more than the other kids. Of course, I was a middle child, so I also appreciated the attention because when you come from a family with three children, your parents have to somehow dole out the attention amongst three
Right.
children. And in this instance, even though we were a class of, I don't know, 25, 30 kids, I don't remember how many exactly, I somehow was special. And I knew that the specialness had something to do with me being smart and me taking exams and being prepared for things and learning things. And this teacher really awakened my appetite for learning. So I would say that that woman was a very, very important and special person to me. And anytime anyone ever asks me, I always mention her name because I want that to
Wow.
live on because I think school teachers can be so important in a young person's life.
Absolutely. I love that you share that story because I began to think about Mrs. Mabry, my own second grade teacher, and what she did for me, and how, that really, again, as you say, a person who we didn't come from a family of means. And so Mrs. Mabry sharing an interest, showing an interest in me, and then just sharing her own personal stories, even in the second grade, was extremely impactful in my own life. And I think it really kind of began to put me on a journey of wanting to create impact, not just, get the success, but how do you truly create impact?
Right.
So one of the things I've noticed is, of course, you're extremely accomplished. Even now as an executive coach, you're an accomplished woman. Have you ever struggled with imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you overcome it?
Well, I can say my first experience with that was when we didn't even have a word to define it. The term imposter syndrome didn't exist in those days. But when I
That's
left my neighborhood in the Bronx and went to private school, to university, that was when I really felt othered. I felt like I didn't belong. I understood that actually I was poor. I had never really saw myself as being poor because everyone around me had the same economic situation. I knew we didn't have a lot, but I didn't know how much we didn't have. And
mhm.
then all of a sudden, I get to this beautiful campus, and all the students, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, had cars. They were going on spring break. It was clear that their elementary school and high school education was better than the one that I had. And naturally, I felt insecure, and naturally, I had my doubts about my ability to be able to power through the program. And in parallel to that, I had to work to support myself, where they had the luxury of having their school fees paid for and being able to party and everything. And of course I partied. I mean, I was still young, but I also had to go work at the National Westminster Bank as a bank teller 3 days a week, 20 hours a week, and take a full load of courses so that I could get through the program. So that's when I was first confronted with it. Um, what I did to overcome it was surround myself with a few other girls who maybe didn't have similar backgrounds, but who really they had different struggles. So we all were trying to get ahead somehow. And I think that's really important because what can happen when you have imposter syndrome is you feel isolated. You feel like you're the only one. And isolation in any situation is never good for you. And so if you can just have one ally, one partner, one friend where you can share, where you can be vulnerable, where you can be open, but you both can also push one another and hype one another up so that you understand, I can do this. She's got my back and I need my friends to be by my side to just give me a couple of words of encouragement. And I managed to find a few girls like that when I was studying, and that helped tremendously.
Wow, that's powerful. That's a great strategy. So speaking of that, as a first generation professional, you've broken generational economic barriers. That's we know that. What strategies do you recommend for women with similar backgrounds who want to advance their careers? Any other strategies? Because that was a great one.
Well, I think what's important is to understand that careers are not linear. You may have a vision of what you want to do with your career because of what you studied or what your interests are, and that's fantastic. But you have to also be very, very attuned to what's going on around you. What are
Mm.
the signals from the industry? How do the people who work with you and your bosses, how do they respond to you? Because they may see something in you that you don't even see in yourself. And so what I would say is to have an open mind and to be a little bit flexible. It doesn't mean to abandon your dreams and to abandon whatever your original plans were, but also understand that you can always return to what it is that you thought you really wanted to do. But sometimes it's worth going off on a different path to grow because you will grow in ways that you could not imagine.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Do you have a specific example from maybe your own story or someone that you've worked with that you can kind of share with us about going on
Well,
a different path or a leader seeing more in you than you saw in yourself?
Well, I mean, I can give you a very clear story. As you mentioned in the opening, I live in Europe now, but I'm a native New Yorker. I was born and raised in New York. I was raised in the Bronx, and I ended up pursuing a wonderful career, which I love tremendously. I was a hospital administrator at one of the most important private hospitals in New York City, and my career was on a trajectory. I was a junior executive. And then I met a man and fell in love, and that's what brought me to Europe. And I had to reinvent myself. So, when I was studying for my MBA, I made a conscious decision that I didn't want to go into finance. I didn't want to go into banking. I wanted to work where I could see the impact of what I was doing on my community and around the people around me. That's why I went into hospital administration. I've never been a person who's been coin operated. I like money just as much as the next person, but that was never enough to drive me. And so, as you could imagine, when I came across the Atlantic to Europe, all of a sudden that career was not available to me anymore for many reasons. But the main one being that I did not speak the language of the country that I moved to, which is German. And so I had to embark on excuse me, I had to embark on reinventing myself. And I would say it was almost grief because I lost
Mm.
a career that I invested more than 10 years in. And that was hard. That was something that I had to overcome. And then I had to somehow put that in a little box and put it to the side and say, okay, but now I'm here. And what am I going to do? And I knew that I had a couple of superpowers. My first superpower was that I had a tremendous amount of skills. I knew how to work with people, I knew how to lead teams, I knew how to be strategic. And the other superpower I had was that I spoke English as a native speaker. And I just happened to be in Europe at the right time when IT companies were expanding their markets into Eastern Europe and they needed native English
Wow.
speakers who could multitask and do a lot of things. And that's how I started my career at IBM. And that was the beginning of what I thought was a 6-month project because it was just a temporary contract. And I stayed with IBM for nearly 15 years. So I ended up moving completely into a different industry. So if you want to talk about a career not being linear, I can tell you from my own experience that you can have non-linearity and you can still grow and you can still enjoy your career.
Oh my gosh, that is so powerful. I'm literally fighting back tears and I have chills going through my body because you don't really hear those stories and how you were in the right place at the right time. But being able to identify a superpower that we would just, I spoke English. You would think, okay, I speak English, and you wouldn't identify that as a superpower somewhere else, right? And so being able to even have the eyes to see that that is a superpower that can be absolutely apparent. So I would encourage everyone to really look deep those things that we think are obvious and, well, I speak English, but I'm here and they speak German. How is that? So what else do we have? I would say, what else do you have in your hands that you can actually use that may not necessarily be as obvious? So I love
Right.
that you shared that story.
And and I think what's important here is that sometimes we're so close to ourselves that we don't
Yes.
know our superpowers. And this is when it's really useful to talk to friends and allies and people who know you, who are just acquaintances, to say, when my name comes up, what are some of the things that you think about me in terms of the way that I work or the way that I engage with people. And that's a way to also to learn how you show up, because how we think we show up is very different from how people perceive how we show up. And sometimes there is some dissonance there, and it's really important to understand that as well.
I love that. So that's a way for us to gain those insights that we need, as well as an opportunity to close any gaps and really think about how are we coming across and how that is impacting our career or even our personal relationships. So thank you for sharing that. If you had to sit down with your younger self, can you hear me? I don't know if this
I can.
okay, perfect. I don't know what happened to my computer here, so I'm going to edit this part out. But if you had to sit down with your younger self, what would you share? What would you tell young Sharon?
I would tell young Sharon that perfectionism can hold you back.
Mm, that's good.
This is something that I discuss very often with my coaching clients. And, I don't like to speak in general terms, but I think that a lot of women suffer from a drive to always move towards perfection. And when you move towards perfection, you drive yourself basically crazy, doing something, re-examining it, getting in your head. And sometimes good enough is just good enough. Because when you're driving everything to perfection, you're not leaving space, time, or energy to invest in the other things that actually you should be driving to perfection. So, I'm not trying to say that we should be shoddy in the way that we deliver anything. Nothing could be further from the truth. But the fact of the matter is that each one of us makes an impact, and we want to make an impact in very specific areas of our lives. But if we're focusing on having an apartment or a home that is absolutely spotless, making all of our food handmade and organic, looking like $1 million every single day, and, you don't have enough space to do anything else that's really driving your passion. And so I would say that would be one of the first things I would tell myself. And, every once in a while, I still have to pinch myself and remind myself, Sharon, you know what? That presentation's good enough. You don't need to work on it another 3 hours. It's fine. It's really
Wow.
fine. And I think all of us can do ourselves a favor by reminding ourselves that every once in a while.
Wow. That is so good. I love that because that was one of my struggles, years ago. And I had to say, okay, what's good enough? And everything does not have to be perfect, but I still can move with excellence in the things that I do put my hands to. So being more cognizant of what I get to say yes to and what I'm saying, you know what, I can do this, but here are the parameters in which I can do it. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So
Sure.
let's fast forward. Young Sharon is an executive coach now. She's been in corporate America. She's been leading in a space in an industry that has been dominated by men, male dominated industries.
Mm.
What advice would you give her in navigating those spaces?
I would say that it's wonderful to have a great work ethic and to be proud of anything that you put your hands on and that you're involved in. However, work alone is not going to get you the recognition and the amplification of your greatness within an organization. And so what I see very often is that women tend to put their heads down and grind and think that their work will speak for itself. But meanwhile, while they're grinding, everybody else is getting visible because they're at the water cooler, or when the company is having the offsite, they're the one who's having fun and having the drink with the boss and getting to know people. Um, and you do yourself a disservice by only focusing on your output. Because when you focus on your output, you get labeled as the taskmaster
Mm-hmm.
and more stuff starts ending up on your desk. And being a taskmaster has nothing to do with being strategic. And so when decisions are being made about who is going to get this stretch assignment, who's going to be leading this next mission, department, division, whatever it is, they're looking for strategic people and they're looking for people that they know, right? And nobody
Yes.
knows you if you have your head down and you're in the weeds all the time. So I would say that that's a lesson that I came to slowly because I was one of those people, so guilty as charged. I was one of those people who thought if I just work hard, everyone's going to recognize it. But I learned something different. And you need to show up. And in this time that we have now, where home offices are so prevalent, home office is wonderful and it provides us with so much flexibility. And, I don't have to talk up why home office is great, but you have to show up too. If you have a physical place to work at and some people are going there, if your boss is going there, if colleagues are going there, you need to show up. People need to know that you're alive and people need to know, like, and trust you. And nobody can do that through a Zoom screen or a Teams screen. They need to touch and feel you.
I would agree with that. That's so good. Now, how did you learn that? How did you know that? How did you
I had
come
a
to know
mentor. I had a mentor. I mean, she was a sort of like an accidental mentor. She started off as my boss, and then we became friends. And then she was promoted, and we stayed in touch. And she said to me once, and I have to tell you, I was highly insulted. She said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean, what am I doing?" And she said, "I never see you in the office. You work from home. You have to understand in the IT business, home office was a thing 20 years ago. I mean,
that?
it's
Right.
only become universally adopted across all industries recently, but it was always the modus operandi in IT. And she basically said, you're not here and nobody knows that you're here. And of course I was affronted and I was like, yeah, but I'm working and I'm working hard and blah. And she said, yeah, but it's not enough. And I went home because I happened to be in the office when she told me that. And I went home and I was really annoyed with her, but then I started to think about what she said to me. And she said, well, do you want a job or do you want a career? You have
Wow.
to choose because what you're doing now, that's a job. But if you want a career, then you need to switch it up a little bit. And I took those words to heart. And
Wow.
that was when I was able to reflect, because I think this is also important to reflect on what you're doing, how you're showing up. And remember what I mentioned before. Her perception was her reality. But it was not only her perception, it was the perception of lots of other people, right? And I needed to change that perception. And so I
Oh,
did.
you are rocking and rolling today, for a lack of a better word. This is like truly game changing information that you're sharing. Wow, this is so good. Thank you so much for this. I have one question for actually I'm not gonna say that. I have a couple more questions for you because I really want to talk about your living while leading framework. It sounds intriguing. I love the title of that. Can you just share with us a success or two of that of how it has transformed a client's life?
Yeah. Well, leading while living while leading is a leadership practice, and I'm a performance coach essentially. And so I work with large corporations, large organizations, and I work with individuals. And one of the things that I really like to put a lot of energy on is, especially when I'm working with individuals, either in a one-on-one or group coaching session, is to be strategic about your life and be strategic about your career, because you and I know that stuff just happens and we can't avoid a lot of things just coming at us, but there are so many other things that we can control. And we don't control them because we say yes to too many things, because we don't weigh the odds of doing this one versus that one. And so when I am thinking in the framework of living while leading, this is about you have to have a life that is somehow balanced. And I don't talk about work-life balance because I think work-life balance somehow connotes that your work, it's either your work or your life, and never the twain shall meet, and they're somehow going against one another. And I don't think that that's true. I think that it's all your life, and you have to somehow balance it. There are some times when your work is going to take all of your energy because you're working on a project or you're building your business. And there are other times when you're going to shift in a different direction because of your fitness, your family, or whatever. And there are other times when they're all somehow going to be in equilibrium, right? And that's what I try to work towards when I'm working with my coaching clients, is to have more moments of the equilibrium as opposed to these real extreme situations.
I love that. We were just sharing about burnout, and it's a very real thing. But I think sometimes we look up and we don't really know what makes us happy. We really have missed out on important moments in our life and we're not present. And I know I can share a very personal story, even with my mom. We were speaking just one day this week, and she said something to me, and I shared with her. I said, "You were present, but not present." And that hurt her deeply, and
Mm.
she was like, well, I did the best I could. And I was like, I'm not accusing you. You asked me a question of
Right.
what did I think and how did I feel? And you were so busy working and doing all of these other things. So I just want you to enjoy your life. And I
Mm.
want us to create those opportunities where you're truly present, which is why when I'm meeting with people, one of the very first things I do is I turn off my phone. And they're like, "What are
Right.
you doing?" And I just sit there with them, and they're like shocked. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. They're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm respecting and honoring our time together. I just want to be in this moment, and I'm trusting that all will be well." I'm not in control of the universe. The last time I checked, I'm not a president. I wasn't married to a president. We will be fine for these few minutes here.
Right.
And I like building those relationships and connections with people. So I love that you kind of share about how do we find ways to really show up and be present, even while we are in leadership positions. One question for you: in your experience coaching high performing women, are there
Hmm.
any mindset shifts that you believe, you talk about being a performance coach, that they can make to dramatically accelerate their own personal growth as well as fulfillment? I know you share with us your framework and
Hmm.
something that we can do, but anything else you'd like to leave us with or share?
Yeah, I think it's really important to learn how to use the word no very actively in your vocabulary. I think that this is so difficult for us culturally, and I'm talking about in the West. Uh, the Western world, culturally, women are taught to say yes, to play nice, not to make waves, to be nurturing. And this, by definition, means that there is no space in your life for you
Ooh,
because you were saying yes to every single thing that comes across your desk. And there is one framework that I work with, that I use, which I call the OWN framework, which is you take an inventory of your life, and and that's the O and the OWN, to observe what's on your plate? What have you said yes to? How are you spending your weeks? And over the course of 2 weeks, do this observation and really take an inventory of every single thing you're doing. Then you start to ask yourself, what are those things that are still important to me, the person I am now? Because, something that was important to you that you committed to doing 5 years ago and you're still doing it may not have the same level of importance to you now. And that's the end part, is to negotiate with yourself and sometimes with others to offload those things that aren't really adding the value. And of course, this takes the weighing part. That's the W, the own part, is to weigh, what do I keep versus what do I give away? What does it look like when I say no as opposed to saying yes? And so on and so forth. And this can change lives. And I know people will say, yeah, but it's not that easy to say no. Okay, it's not that easy to say no, but you know what? I challenge you to reduce the impulse to say yes.
wow.
Slow yourself down. Because if you just take a breather and say, I'm not going to say yes in the moment that everyone asks me something, I'm going to take a breather, and whatever is a respectable amount of time, if it's your boss, maybe you can't have 24 hours, maybe it's 20 minutes that you can wait, right? But if it's, a sibling or a child, you can say, you know what, let me chew on that for a night and I'll come back to you tomorrow, right? So you take the time that you need that works for whatever the context is that you're working in, but at least you haven't said yes to immediately. And it gives you a chance to really think through, what are the consequences of saying yes? If I say yes to this, what do I have to say no to in my life? Because something has to give. There were only 24 hours in a day. And hopefully you're sleeping 7.5 to 8 hours of them, right? Or at least relaxing, right? And so I would say that this can be a real shift for my clients when they go through this exercise, if they go through it in a very honest way, because you do have to have a degree of honesty about the whole thing. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Wow. I don't know what to say. I mean, this is so good. I can continue to talk to you. We can go hours. This was, I'm going to say, life changing and impactful. I know it was for me. I walked away with so many great reminders, a great framework, a way to be able to think about what am I saying yes to, and even giving myself more time to really think about that. How do I want to phrase it when I need to say no? So thank you so much for this. I really believe that this is going to really put us down the path of being more impactful and being more present and really enjoying the one life that we have to live while leading well. So thank you. I know our listeners want more because I want more. So how do we find you?
Well, you can find me on my website. That's livingwhileleading.com. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so I'm more than happy to be connected with you, or you can follow me if you want. That's Sharon Ehrlich. You'll find me on LinkedIn as well. And I also have a podcast, although I'm thinking about discontinuing it, but I think the episodes are full with lots of information. And there are at least 79 episodes on my website or on Apple or Spotify. So if someone wants to get a little bit of insight into my thinking around certain topics, you can certainly find my podcast, which is also called Living While Leading, as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will have the link to livingwhileleading.com. It's
Mhm.
a way for you to work with Sharon. So if you're a professional woman looking to accelerate your leadership journey, visit Sharon's Work with Sharon page to discover transformative coaching options, free resources, or you can also book an exclusive strategy session that can help you break through your current career challenges. Thank you so much, Sharon, for being with us. Cannot wait to continue the conversation with you as we move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Sharalyn.
Thank you. You don't lead like everyone else, so your resources shouldn't look like everyone else's. I created the Game Changer Leadership Collection for high impact leaders like you, visionaries, change agents, decision makers who lead with intention and influence. This free, high impact resource pulls from my leadership arsenal and delivers immediate, actionable insights you can use right now to elevate your influence, lead with conviction, and drive lasting transformation. It's not just a toolkit, it's your first step toward leading at the level you were born for. Let me show you what's inside. The Leadership Edge Sampler. It's a preview of my 10 daily power skills to sharpen your influence and impact. The Influence Language Mini Guide. Essential phrases to increase your authority and build trust in every room you walk into. The Leadership Blind Spot Snapshot. Because the greatest risk are the ones we don't see. The Power of One Visual Aid. A reminder that even one decision, one tone, or one conversation can shift a team or stall a movement. The Executive Briefing Checklist, a go-to tool for high-stakes communication that drives clarity and alignment. The 5-minute accountability brief, a no-fluff framework to build a culture of ownership fast. And we have the Game Changer Ascension Model Overview, my proprietary leadership growth map to help you scale your influence with intention. These are the very same tools I use with executives, culture shapers, and elite teams, leaders who know what's at stake and aren't here to play small. Because when you're called to shift systems, influence nations, and build legacies, you can't afford to lead on autopilot. This is where your next level begins. Download the Game Changer Leadership Collection today. It's free, it's strategic, and it's built for leaders who are born to shift the game. I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne, and this is your Leadership Edge. Thank you for joining me on the Game Changer with Dr. Sharalyn, where we don't follow trends, we set them, and we don't just lead teams, we shift legacies. If today's message challenged, stretched, or inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, tag it, lead through it. Because real leaders don't just consume wisdom, they multiply it. Want to go deeper? Subscribe to the Ultra Influential newsletter for exclusive tools, behind-the-scenes strategy, and weekly mindset shifts for the leader ready to move nations, markets, and minds. Visit www.smpistrategies.com or send a note to leadership@smpistrategies.com. And if you're ready for next level coaching or consulting that positions you as the right leader at the right time in the right place, let's talk. This is what we do, and we do it with precision, power, and purpose. Remember, change isn't just something you lead, it's something you become. Stay bold, stay brilliant, stay a game changer.